Welcome to a deep dive, everybody. We're going to be talking about The Merry Gentleman, a film that I bet a lot of you haven't heard of. But trust me, it's got some interesting stuff going on under the surface.
Oh, for sure.
We're working from one in-depth review today, so instead of just telling you if it's good or bad, we're going to be kind of like those detectives, digging into the clues, figuring out what makes this movie tick. And the first thing that really caught my eye, I gotta say, is Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
The Batman himself, right. Not only is he starring in this thing, but he also directed it.
And that's where things get really interesting,
Yeah.
right? Because this isn't your typical Keaton action flick. The Merry Gentleman, it's a drama, more of a thriller even.
Right, not Batman Returns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not about explosions and car chases. It leans way more into atmosphere, mood, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the review actually uses words like minimalist, quiet tension, even somber at one point. I don't know about you, but those words don't usually scream Michael Keaton to me.
Right. But that's the hook, right?
Yeah, it is. So for all of you out there who like movies that make you think, that stay with you even after they're over, this deep dive might be right up your alley.
Definitely. To give you a little taste, it all goes down in Chicago.
Okay.
But not the Chicago you're probably picturing. Think like snowy, bleak, kind of rundown, you know?
Yeah.
And we've got Frank Logan, played by Keaton. He's a hitman.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we do have some action.
Well, sort of, but he's not exactly living the glamorous life. You know? He's haunted by what he's done, looking for some kind of redemption.
So he's got baggage, this Frank guy.
He does. And then you've got Kate Frazier. That's Kelly Macdonald.
Oh, I love her.
She's great. And her character is dealing with a past full of abuse. So you've got these two characters, totally different worlds, right?
Yeah.
But they form this connection that's like the core of the whole movie.
Interesting. So it's like their shared pain, that need for something more is what brings them together. But let's circle back to Keaton for a minute. I mean, I think Beetlejuice, I think Batman. Those are pretty high energy roles. You know what I mean?
Sure.
What do you think made him choose this kind of film for his directorial debut? I mean, out of all the stories he could tell, why this one?
That is the question, isn't it?
It is.
It makes you think about other actors who've gone on to direct, right?
Yeah.
Like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
A lot of these films are pretty introspective, sometimes even dark. Maybe it's like when some actors step behind the camera, they want to dig into stuff that goes deeper than just pure entertainment.
Huh. So you're saying it's almost like a way for them to show a different side of themselves artistically?
Could be.
Fascinating. So we have this unusual pairing, this hitman and this woman escaping abuse. We've got this slow burn kind of atmosphere. And then, like you said, the setting itself, Chicago in winter. The review really highlights that almost like the city is a character in its own right.
Oh, location can be huge in film. Like, think about it. If you had a thriller that was all fast-paced and it was set in a busy city, all those crowds, all the noise, it would add to the chaos, right?
Totally.
But with The Merry Gentleman, you've got those quiet, snowy streets, almost deserted, and it just mirrors the feeling inside Frank and Kate. That isolation they both feel.
It's like the city is reflecting their inner world.
Exactly. Adding another whole layer to the story.
Right. Speaking of inner worlds, let's talk about the performances themselves. The review had some really interesting things to say about both Keaton and Macdonald.
Yeah, Keaton's performance is described as subdued but powerful, which is so interesting, right? Because we're used to seeing him, like, larger than life.
For sure.
Here, it seems like he's choosing to show vulnerability, all that inner conflict, in a really subtle way. Almost like instead of shouting his emotions from the rooftops, he's letting them simmer underneath.
Ooh, that's a good image.
You got to really pay attention to catch those little flickers of expression, and it just adds to the suspense, keeps you wondering what he'll do next.
And Kelly Macdonald. She's amazing at conveying emotion. What'd they have to say about her portrayal of Kate?
The review says she's the heart of the film.
Yeah.
Like, she brings this strength even though her character's been through so much.
Which is something so many people can relate to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That experience of trying to heal from past hurt, finding the courage to keep going, it's something we all deal with in some way.
Yeah, no matter who you are, you've probably got some baggage you're carrying around.
Right.
It makes me think about why Keaton chose to direct this story in the first place. Maybe he wanted to explore that quieter kind of strength,
Yeah.
The kind that doesn't always get noticed, but it's still incredibly powerful.
It's possible. The review also mentions Bobby Cannavale, He plays a detective.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't have a huge role, but it seems like he brings some extra tension to the mix.
Yeah.
And it made me think about how, even small roles can be so important to how a film feels overall.
Oh, absolutely. Like, even if an actor doesn't have a ton of screen time, if they're good, they can really add to the whole atmosphere.
Like, they need all the instruments in an orchestra, right?
Yeah.
Even if one doesn't have a solo, it still contributes to the sound.
Exactly. But getting that balance right, it's tricky. You want those supporting characters to feel real, but you don't want to take away from the main story.
It's a challenge a lot of films struggle with.
Speaking of challenges, the review does point out some criticisms of the film. One thing they mention is the pacing. Apparently it's pretty slow, which, some people might find frustrating.
Yeah, pacing in film. It's almost like choosing the tempo of a song.
Right.
Some people love that fast, intense beat. Others want something slower, more thoughtful. It's a choice the director makes.
So it's not automatically bad if a film is slow, right? It just depends on whether it works for that particular story.
Exactly. Sometimes that slower pace can actually make things more intense. It pulls you deeper into the characters' heads,
Yeah.
You start noticing the little things, the stuff that's not being said out loud.
It makes you pay attention, which I guess is especially interesting when we're talking about a thriller. Usually we expect those twists and turns, the chases,
Yeah.
But The Merry Gentleman seems to be saying, hey, the real thrills are in those quieter moments, the way these characters connect, the way their emotions slowly build.
And that slowness lets us really see the performances, how subtle they are.
I wonder if it helps the actors too, like they have more space to breathe, to let those emotions build naturally.
Interesting thought. It's like they're playing chamber music instead of a big symphony. Every little gesture, every glance means something. And the audience has to be more active. Really watch closely to understand what's going on underneath.
It's like we become detectives too,
right,
trying to piece together these characters' inner lives.
Which is what good storytelling is all about, isn't it?
Totally. Making the audience feel like they're part of the discovery.
Exactly. And The Merry Gentleman seems to do that in a way that's both subtle and really powerful. It's like it trusts the audience to be smart, to get the nuances. And that's kind of rare these days, don't you think?
I think you're right. So much entertainment feels like it's spelling everything out for you, holding your hand the whole way.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder if maybe this film got overlooked when it came out. Maybe folks just weren't expecting this kind of quiet intensity from Michael Keaton.
Yeah, maybe they needed time to adjust their expectations,
Right, like they were waiting for Batman to burst out of his shell or something.
Instead, they got something much more complex.
Yeah. It makes me think about how art doesn't always fit neatly into boxes, Sometimes it takes a while for a film or a book to find its audience.
That's true. And that makes me curious about how The Merry Gentleman was received. Did it get more appreciation over time? Did critics and audiences start to see it in a new light?
That's a great question. And honestly, it makes me want to watch it even more now, just to experience it for myself and see what I think.
I get that.
I love those movies that don't give you all the answers, the ones that stay with you long after you've seen them.
That's the beauty of art, isn't it? It makes you think, it challenges you, leaves you with questions. And speaking of questions, I got to ask about the title.
Uh-oh, here we go.
The Merry Gentleman.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about how moody it is, the isolation, the search for redemption. Where's the merry in all this?
Right. It's almost a joke, isn't it?
It is. Like, is it a hint that there's some deeper layer of irony we're missing? Or is it just to make us question what we think the film is about?
Man, that's a good question. And the review doesn't really give us a straight answer, does it?
Nope. We're left to figure it out ourselves.
Which is kind of cool, actually.
It is. Like, maybe the merry is in those little moments of connection between the characters, those tiny bits of hope that peek through all the darkness.
Or maybe it's about how resilient people can be,
Right there.
That even after making huge mistakes, there's still a chance for redemption.
It could be about finding the good in the unexpected places. Which is a pretty powerful message if you think about it.
It is. It's like the title itself is a puzzle, just another layer to the whole thing. Makes you want to watch it and try to solve it yourself.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just talking about a movie, we're talking about art, about how different people see things differently, about the power of stories to make us think in new ways.
It's about opening our minds, I guess.
Exactly. And The Merry Gentleman seems to be doing a pretty good job of that. And that's what I love about these deep dives, We're not just sitting here giving thumbs up or thumbs down. It's like we're taking the movie apart, seeing how all the pieces fit together.
Right, exactly. And for Keaton, I mean, this is his first time directing, right?
First time, yeah.
He could have picked something a lot safer, something people would expect from him.
Oh, totally. It's like he's saying, hey, there's more to me than just Batman.
Yeah, yeah. Which makes me curious about the style of the film itself. The review keeps mentioning this atmospheric cinematography with muted tones. I don't know, that sounds kind of artsy, right?
A little bit.
What does that actually look like on screen? Can you give us a picture?
Okay, so picture those snowy Chicago streets we were talking about. But instead of being busy and full of life, they're practically deserted.
Okay, yeah.
Lots of long shots, where the characters look tiny compared to the buildings in the sky, or scenes where they're framed in doorways, windows, like even when they're in the same room, they're still separated.
So the way the movie looks actually reinforces that feeling of isolation they're both going through.
Exactly. It's not just about what you see, it's about how it makes you feel.
Right, right. And it's not just the visuals either, right? The review mentioned sound design, too.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. There's no big sweeping score telling you what to feel.
Interesting.
Instead, they use silence or little ambient noises like the crunch of snow underfoot, a siren in the distance, that kind of thing.
Ooh, that's so effective. When a movie uses silence instead of music, it can be way creepier, way more unsettling.
Totally. It's like, have you ever been in a totally quiet room and you suddenly notice every little sound, every creak, every groan?
Yes. Like my house is haunted all of a sudden.
Exactly. That's the feeling this movie is going for.
It makes you lean in like you're trying to hear what's going to happen next.
And that's brilliant because it makes the audience work harder. Instead of the music telling you, be scared now, you got to create that feeling yourself.
So it's like a more active way of watching a movie.
Right. You're not just passively absorbing. You're part of the experience.
That's cool. So we've got these visuals, the sound, and then that slow pacing we talked about. It seems like everything about this film is about creating a mood, It seeps into you slowly instead of hitting you over the head.
It's almost the opposite of how we consume everything else these days.
Right.
Everything's got to be fast, instant gratification.
Right. We're so used to information overload.
But a film that forces you to slow down, to actually sit with the characters and how they're feeling, that can be really powerful.
Especially when we think about it being a thriller, right? I mean, normally you'd expect twists, car chases, explosions, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But The Merry Gentleman seems to be saying, no, the real suspense is in the quiet moments in how these people connect with each other.
And that slowness really lets you appreciate the actors, how subtle they are. Which makes me wonder, does that slower pace actually make it easier for the actors too?
How so?
Like instead of having to be on all the time, maybe they have more space to breathe, to let those emotions build more naturally.
That's a really interesting point. It's almost like they're playing chamber music instead of a huge symphony.
Right.
Every gesture, every little look means something.
And as viewers, we got to pay extra attention to those details.
Exactly. Like we said, we become detectives. We're trying to figure out these characters just as much as they're trying to figure out each other.
Which, when you think about it, that's what good storytelling is all about, right? Getting the audience involved, making them think.
Totally. And The Merry Gentleman seems to be doing that in a really smart, subtle way. And that's refreshing, honestly.
It is. Makes you wonder if maybe that's why it didn't get as much attention when it first came out. Maybe folks weren't ready for that kind of quiet intensity,
Maybe. Or maybe they just weren't expecting that from Michael Keaton.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, everyone knows him for those big, energetic roles.
And this is totally different. It's like he's asking the audience to reconsider what they think they know about him.
Which is kind of a bold move when you think about it.
It is. But it speaks to the fact that art can surprise you, challenge you. And that brings us back to the title, The Merry Gentleman.
Oh, yeah, that title. We've talked about how the movie is all about moodiness, isolation, trying to find redemption. Where's the merry and all that?
Right. It's almost like a joke, a deliberate misdirection.
Like, is it hinting at something we haven't figured out yet? Some hidden layer of irony?
Maybe. Or maybe it's just a way to get us thinking, to question our assumptions about what the film is really trying to say.
I like that. It's like the title itself is a little mystery.
It is. And the review doesn't give us the answer, does it? It's up to us to figure it out.
Which, honestly, I kind of love. It makes me even more curious to see the film.
Right. Like maybe the merry is in those small moments of connection, the tiny glimmers of hope, that shine through all that darkness.
Or maybe it's about seeing the good in unexpected places.
Exactly. And that's a pretty powerful idea, that even in the midst of all the bad stuff, there's still beauty to be found.
It's about choosing to focus on that beauty, even when it's hard to see.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? We're not just learning about a film. We're having a bigger conversation about art, about how we interpret things, about how stories can make us think differently.
It's about being open to new ideas, even if they're challenging.
Exactly. And The Merry Gentleman seems to be doing a pretty good job of challenging us.
It really makes you think about Keaton's career, doesn't it? Like, this film feels so different from what we're used to seeing him in. It's almost like he's trying to show us a different side of himself, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's like he's saying, hey, I'm not just a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And the fact that he chose to direct it himself makes it even more interesting.
Right. He could have just taken on a different kind of acting role, but instead he decided to shape the whole story, control the mood, the tone, everything.
Exactly. Like he really wanted to make his mark on it.
Makes me wonder if those darker themes, you know, the isolation, the guilt, the idea of redemption, maybe those things resonate with him on a personal level.
It's possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it wasn't just about stepping outside his comfort zone as an actor, but also about exploring something deeper within himself.
Yeah. And that willingness to go there, to those difficult places, it gives the film a lot of weight.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't a popcorn flick. It's about real life, even the messy parts.
The parts we don't always want to talk about. You know, when you think about it that way, it makes you see the title, The Merry Gentleman, in a different light.
How so?
Well, maybe the merry isn't about being happy or lighthearted. Maybe it's about finding a different kind of joy.
What do you mean?
Like finding beauty and meaning in the unexpected places.
Yeah.
In those quiet moments of connection, in how resilient people can be, in finding forgiveness even when you've been hurt.
Oh, I see. So it's not about being cheerful. It's about finding hope, even when things are tough.
Exactly. It's like recognizing that even in the darkness, there are still glimmers of light.
And those glimmers, those are what make this film and this deep dive so interesting. It's not about giving you easy answers. It's about making you think for yourself.
And maybe even challenging some of your assumptions.
Right. And I think that's one of the best things about art in general, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's not about being told what to think or feel. It's about being part of a conversation, exploring ideas together.
And hopefully coming away with more questions than you started with.
Which is what we've tried to do here today with The Merry Gentleman. Even though we just had one review, we've dug into it pretty deep, I think.
We have. And hopefully we've piqued your curiosity enough to check it out for yourself.
So if you're looking for a film that's going to make you think, that'll stay with you long after it's over, I'd say give The Merry Gentleman a shot.
And even if it's not your cup of tea, hopefully you've learned something new about how to analyze a film.
Right. How to appreciate different styles of storytelling and how to find those hidden layers of meaning.
Because that's what the deep dive is all about, right?
It is. It's about exploring, asking questions, and keeping those conversations going.
So keep diving deep, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Until then.